This is the 425 Homer Pod. Welcome, everybody. I am at Coach Torres _, on Twitter. He is at Coach Miller 06 on Twitter, bringing you some Michigan football takes, thoughts, and opinions from last weekend's game in Piscataway. We took care of the Scarlet Knights 52-17 after a slow start. Jeremy, of course, couldn't watch as he was in Orlando with his boy out on the town celebrating a birthday. So I had to send Jeremy a update of every single play that happened. It got pretty tiresome by the end of it, but
Yeah,
it was fun when the Michigan Avalanche happened though, with the Mikey Barrett back-to-back interceptions, and then Will Johnson's picks came through. Because before that, it was looking a little doom and gloom. We had Jeremy leaning towards the bottle there for a minute.
yeah. I got home late last night and ended up watching the Michigan game just so I could be ready for the pod. And it really was a slow start. Not necessarily offensively, other than obviously the punt block. But I did notice some things that I really liked. We had a few more tendency breakers. I liked the 25 boot to start the game with the opening script. That was really nice, and to find Ronnie Bell and um, get JJ going. And then the very next play, we had a very nice tendency breaker where normally we'll swing the RB out on motion before the play hits, and then JJ will snap it and then he'll throw it to him on the screen. But we bucked that trend. Rutgers was ready for that, but it was a tendency breaker, and we turned to the right and threw the slanted Andro Anthony, which was nice to see. And it was just a really solid day for JJ overall. On that first opening drive, another thing I noticed, they didn't run it because they called the timeout. But in the red zone, we were in 12 personnel, which isn't new for Michigan. We've seen it all year. We've seen it last year as well. But what we did was we flexed Colson Loveland out wide with Andro Anthony, which we haven't seen this year very often. I don't recall seeing it at all this season so far. But we flexed him out, and we had a Ronnie Bell down at the bottom of the screen. And it was nice. I would have liked to seen what we were going to do with that, but unfortunately, we called a timeout and didn't come back out in that formation, and
Yeah,
we
we'll
were
see it
able to
again.
score a touchdown anyways.
Cody, you want to pull up
Um,
the box score from Rutgers? One of the things that I noticed, you mentioned all the tendency breakers, obviously. Something new that we added to the arsenal was the essentially the Tennessee 2x2 stack stop screen. We threw that 2 or 3 times.
yeah,
And I've mentioned before, JJ's not very good throwing on a spot. He's not really good with the catch and throw, and certainly not
yeah,
behind the line of scrimmage. And he struggled with that throw. CJ couldn't scoop that ball off the ground. We ran it twice. It didn't really look good, and I'm not sure where that really came from either.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I think it'll get. I like we said before. I think it'll get better as the year progresses, or as his career progresses, I should say, because we're pretty late in the year already.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll be a talking point this off season, and he'll try to work on that some this off season. But I mean, I really think that we had a pretty good day overall. I think we came out knowing that Rutgers was going to want to stop the run because it's our bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to do some good things. I liked what I saw offensively, even though the stats may say we didn't throw for that many yards. Um, I like getting some of the younger receivers involved. That was good to see. Using We've seen it some already, but it was good to see. It's always good to see Donovan Edwards flexed out wide and catching balls, and him getting 2 feet down would have been a touchdown in the NFL as well on that go route.
Yeah, it was
I
gorgeous.
really,
Honestly, we should be splitting them out more the way that, because our receivers have not really lived up to the billing we put on them preseason. I was looking at it as we probably have the second best receiver room in the conference behind Ohio State, and these guys are struggling to get separation a little bit, and they're really struggling with coming down with some balls that they should be catching.
Yeah, and maybe and Harbaugh mentioned it, and we brought it up last week, I believe, that Andro Anthony was going to start getting a little bit more involved offensively, and we certainly saw us targeting him more for sure. He was
Yeah.
definitely this was probably the most snaps he's played in one game all season for
Yeah.
sure.
He certainly took the Roman Hemming starting role and reps.
Yeah.
Roman Wilson.
Uh, and Cornelius, I mean, I think that was one thing we didn't really get to last week that we had on the docket, but one of the questions we were going to question was, is it time to kind of take some of Cornelius Johnson's snaps away? Even as great as a run blocker as he is, and he is one of the best run blockers in the country for sure at the wide receiver position, but he just doesn't separate as well as you would like him to. And I think that's one reason we saw Andro Anthony a little bit more because we saw it last year, and I think we can see it going forward. He can be a game changer on offense, especially with Roman Wilson dealing with injuries. And
Yeah.
really, the whole team had injuries, but it was nice to see him and some of the other young receivers get some looks today or on Saturday.
Yeah, Tyler Morris, the true freshman from the same high school as JJ in Illinois, came out and made the huge third down catch. Amarian Walker got some snaps. Didn't see Darius Clemens all night, but which we have earlier in the year, early
Yeah.
on in games too. But we did see some Amarian Walker. Let's go back to the injury thing because that was something that really bugged me Saturday night. Was Jim doesn't give injury updates. He doesn't tell you when guys are coming back. He doesn't tell you what's wrong with the guys. But we find out 10 minutes before kickoff on Saturday that we're down 7 starters. We're already down Trente Jones. We're already down Eric All, already down Nakai Hillgreen for the year. And then you find out that Hayes and Wilson didn't travel, and Jalen Harrell didn't travel, and Makari Page didn't travel. And the Big Ten Network's like, well, guys, we're finding out these last minute scratches. These guys aren't going to play. They didn't even travel. They're not even in the freaking state.
Yeah.
So, it's just, I'm not going to complain about Harbaugh because, he's doing what he's doing. But it's the biggest thing as a fan. As a coach, I understand it. As a fan, it really irks me. And I really don't like it.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a trend around college football now these days too. I know Steve Sarkisian does the same thing, Nick Saban does the same thing. It sucks as a fan not knowing who's going to play, especially like you and me that like extensively watch and we're looking at game snaps and who's playing on
Right.
certain downs and things like of that nature. It was disappointing. If I'm Michigan, I would go ahead and just let those guys rest another week, and get those
Yeah.
guys healthy to end the season. Um, Jeff Percy, he played okay against former Michigan player Aaron Lewis. I mean, there was definitely some things that Percy struggled with, especially getting pushed off the ball. He struggled some at that, but
Right.
man,
I think Nick
this
Baumgartner did a rewatch on him and he gave up. He didn't look great at times, but he only ended up giving up one pressure. So
yeah, and I really think I gotta continue to as much as we want to pet peeve Harbaugh on that issue. I kind of want to give the coaching staff their flowers yet again. I mean, there's not a lot of staffs in the country that make better second half adjustments than Michigan does. I mean, they've proved it all year.
I don't
They
know if
did
there
the
is a
same
staff
thing
that does.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved the quote. Whoever the sideline reporter for BTN was, and they're like, what halftime adjustments did you make, Jim?" And he's like, "Well, they just adjusted their chin straps a little tighter." And it really did, because Rutgers they come to play like we expected. It was nighttime. The atmosphere was as good as you're gonna get in Rutgers. They
Yep.
had a sellout crowd. The freaking light guy was flashing them things on and off and on before the refs even signal touchdown on their scores. They got the cannon
Yeah.
going. They put on a show, dude, and they have to. I'm sure it was a big recruiting night for them, and they have
Yeah.
to play well against us, and they have. Uh, None of that was really out of the ordinary. It was just like, can we just not tonight? Can we just put
Yeah.
them away? And then we did. We came out and we did that. The big thing at halftime was like, all right, let's just take a deep breath. and we did, and
Yeah.
look what happened.
And man, as long as I'm giving out flowers, I gotta give flowers out to Mike Barrett, man. He we've had questions about that second linebacker position. You mentioned NHG being out for the year. I know that's not reported because of Harbaugh's injury thing, and I hope it's not true. I hope we can at least get him back for Ohio State, but we're not going to know. I mean, we won't know until game day, honestly, which sucks. But man, Mike Barrett, the last couple weeks, he's really stepped up. He had a drop pick six against Sparty, just reading the
Yeah.
hell out of the screen. And he
Mhm.
made up for it with the tip pick that he took back to the house, and then the pick on the previous drive as well. And I'm just so happy for that kid. Came in, lost the head coach that he committed to,
Yep.
lost the position that he was recruited to play, and he didn't transfer out. He moved to off-ball linebacker, and he's really played well these past couple weeks.
Yeah, it's been fun. He's a guy that deserves it, and it was cool to see his dad responding to that Michigan tweet, talking about how glad they are that his son went there and how down to earth and how good of a dude Harbaugh's been in all of their travels and recruitments and whatnot. But yeah, it's been good to see. It was good to see for him. And like I said, that was a fun little it was a fun third quarter having that avalanche pile on him like that.
Yeah,
Back to the special teams, uncharacteristically sloppy special teams for the first time in literally years. I think that was definitely our first punt blocked since 2015.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, hats off to them. They schemed it up. They schemed it up real nice. And then Jake Moody comes out, misses 250 yarders, which I'm going to attribute to the wind. I didn't hear any
yeah,
reports of it being terribly nasty there, but I can't imagine it was non-existent considering how it was over the rest of the country.
yeah,
So to miss both of them would be unlike Moody. To miss one, like okay, maybe, but last week we're talking about him trending towards back-to-back Grozas, and I mean that's still on the table, but yeah, he couldn't have been thrilled with that. And then, like we said, it's just not what you come to expect from a Michigan special team unit.
yeah. I mean, for their fair share of mistakes and issues that we've had. The two things that you can be happy about is Cornelius Johnson almost blocking that kick that ended up rolling down to like the 18-yard
Yeah, ended up
line.
being just a great punt for them.
And then also uh, recovering that onside where a lot of teams may not have been expecting it and wouldn't have handled it and lost that possession. We were able to get down on it and save that offensive drive for us.
Yep, that
Uh,
was Quentin Johnson came over and recovered that.
yeah.
So yeah, the defense played not amazing in the first half, but Mason Graham stepped up, made a play early on. It had been a couple weeks since he'd really stood out. The linebackers looked good, and Yabioki got up and got to start for Jalen Harrell. That was nice to see. There's definitely a couple people on Twitter in the last month or two that were saying like, come November, it's going to be more an Oki at the edge, and it was because of injury. But hey, Oki was ready to go, and he was the guy there getting his first
Yeah.
career start for Michigan. So Morris and Upshaw both combined for a couple sacks. And other than that, man, I did text you like DJ Turner got picked on again a little bit Saturday. Did you notice anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just want to chalk it up to just an off night for him. I can't imagine that he thought that their game plan was going to be to pass the ball as much as they attempted to.
Right.
But I mean, he's played so well the last 2 years that I kind of want to just chalk it up to an off night. But it's definitely something that we have to keep an eye on, just knowing Nebraska's got a couple talented receivers, and obviously Ohio State's probably got the best receiving core in the country, especially if they get JSN back.
Yeah.
So it's going to
Which
be something worth noting. Hopefully, Jamon Green can can come out healthy. But it would, I mean, Will Johnson, he didn't really. He's the more reps he gets, the better he's gonna play, and he certainly proved it on Saturday.
Yeah, hopefully it was reported Jamon traveled and Jamon did dress, so I'm guessing they just held him out of
Yeah,
precaution and like, hey, let's tonight's a night to let Will Johnson do Will Johnson things, and he did. He came away with an interception and didn't play too bad. He did have some off coverage there on that slant just before halftime that didn't look too great, but he's a freshman and he's learning. So yeah, it was much ado about nothing really that first half. The teams are gonna the style of play that Michigan plays, the complementary football, and I mentioned it last week. If we're within a score at halftime, we're gravy. If we're down 2 scores, maybe But other than
yeah,
that, like you're gonna have to pull something out of your ass for me to be seriously worried heading into halftime. Michigan's outscored their last 4 opponents 100-3 in the second half, and that includes a top 10 team in Penn State.
yeah.
So, all right, looking forward to next week. We have the Cornhuskers coming to town. Is Casey Thompson healthy right now?
I feel like he's a little banged up. I think he's still starting. He kind of had this
Man,
issue with
what if we had a producer that could pull that up for us and like actually do his job? That'd be crazy.
with
Casey
with
Thompson,
it's been one.
is he hurt?
It's been he had the same issue at Texas when they couldn't protect him late in the year. He got banged up. I
Right.
know he kind of hurt his thumb again. From what I saw earlier a couple games ago, and I think I'm not as worried about this game as I was to start the year, just because I know how banged up he is. It looks like his status is out, as our producer pulls
A few
up the
days ago.
ESPN.
Yeah, he did not play against Minnesota, and I knew that, but I didn't know if this was a long term thing or not. I mean, going into the year, like you think that okay, Casey Thompson can sling it a little bit. This offense should be relatively creative, and they have a couple pass catchers. But right now, I mean, sounds like Mickey Joseph's going to get the job out there full time. But even
Yeah,
so, they're down and out, and it's November, and they're coming to the big house. Like they're going to have to match our physicality. It's not going to be a matchup like last year where they pull some things out schematically against their defense. I don't know if they can really recapture that.
yeah. I mean, I think at this point the whole program's ready for a reset and to
Yeah,
kind of start anew and get that coaching search going. I really, honestly, I don't. I think the biggest thing for Michigan is, as bad as Nebraska's been in the first half, they've schemed up some things to put some points on the board early. And if Michigan can just survive those early haymakers that they're going to try to throw at us, it should be relatively smooth sailing for the rest.
yeah,
Their defense isn't all worldly. I'm not really worried about it. Okan
no,
Mathis has been a huge disappointment for them as a transfer portal pickup. Just really stiff and plays high, and he's done some good things, but he's not nearly the impact player they thought he was going to be when they
yeah.
got him in the
I know
transfer
you were
portal.
excited. I know you were excited to watch him there. So he definitely has been underwhelming. But as has everything been. So
Yeah,
they yeah, like you said, just survive their initial onslaught, take their opening script, shove it up their ass, and then just play our game the rest of the way and stay healthy. So I'm with you on keeping those guys out if they're even banged up. Well, that's the thing. I did mention this point when I'm talking about being upset with the injuries. It's not like these dudes were banged up at the end of the state game. It's not like
yeah,
we were waiting to hear all week if they were going to play or
yeah,
not. They just weren't playing all of a sudden.
yeah,
So for all I know, Ryan Hayes has a broken leg, and he's never going
yeah,
to play football again.
yeah,
Knock on wood. But it's like that's the frustrating thing is it's not like okay they're not going all right, yeah, I thought that might happen. It's just like, oh, I didn't know they were even hurt, and now they're
yeah.
not even at the game. So it's there. And then yeah, I mean the Illinois game will Definitely looks a little bit different now that Sparty took them down at home. That alleviates quite a bit of concern on my end, but we'll talk about that the following week. Just bouncing around the
Yeah, I
Big Ten
mean,
here.
it really. I mean, I can't discount what they've done this year just because of that one game, but I'm definitely a little less worried about it for sure, and we'll get into that next week. Um, I think the only thing we need to talk about that I can think of is, do you want to touch on your new college football playoff rankings and where you got Michigan slated?
Yeah, let me pull it up here real quick just so I can round off my top 10. I published on our Patreon, which you can find through the Twitter, my top 25 rankings and a fresh Heisman rankings yesterday on Sunday. So, yeah, my new top 4 is Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, TCU 4. So, yeah, I mean, Michigan's most likely going to come in at 3, maybe even 4 if they get disrespected in the real rankings, the real world rankings. But I moved them up to number 2 because going into this year, you knew Ohio State's going to have the talent. You know what they're going to do on offense. But Michigan beat them in a way that they couldn't match last year to become the champs. So now Michigan's got to be knocked off, and Ohio State's going to have to match us on what we do. And we've proved we're that team again. And Ohio State, to me, the way that they played at Northwestern, beating a one win Northwestern team 21-7, and at times, the numbers added up at the end of the game, but at times struggling to move the ball downfield and not being able to stop a Northwestern run game when Northwestern's telling you we're running it and we're running it right here. It's a huge dent in their armor for me, and that's why I got Michigan at 2 and Ohio State at 3.
Yeah, I mean, as good as Jim Knowles has been on that turnaround for the defense, his defenses at Oklahoma State were still susceptible to the run game despite his many blitz packages, and
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be a little bit of an issue still for them. So I definitely get how you got to that conclusion. For me, the only I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to put us there yet. And if this was a time where we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years in a row, I'd be all for it. But just knowing how good Ohio State's been, and it's been since the '90s, since Michigan's won in Columbus, it gives me a bunch of pause. And I know that we're going to get their best game. Like, as bad as they struggled, I'll put it a little bit of that win factor in there because and yes, it's the Midwest, and that those types of games are very common in November. But for me, man, I'm not ready to. I'm as much as I love Michigan, and as much as talented as we are, and as much as we've proven that we're as good as we were last year, it's just hard for me to pick us winning Columbus with us not doing it since '97.
Well,
And
we're not talking about that yet, though, bro. It's 3 weeks
I
away. We're
know,
talking about rankings right now.
yeah, and but that's the reason I wouldn't put him at. That's the reason I wouldn't put him at 2, because my sole reason, if I
Right
put
now,
him
you're
at
not there
2,
yet.
yeah, if
Yeah,
I put him at 2,
you're
then
saying they should go there and win. Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
telling the world that they're going to win in Columbus, and I'm
Right.
just not ready to do that just yet.
Yeah, and I understand that as well. Blake's Heisman chances are improving by the week. He had 109 yards. Donnie also ran for 109 yards, but Blake's gone for, I think he ran for 75 yards against Colorado State, and then it's been like 100 in every game since, I believe.
Yeah,
He's close to leading the nation in touchdowns. I believe he's second in the country in scoring. So Stroud and Hooker both had mediocre weeks, and Blake keeps on doing his thing. So right now I've got Blake atop my Heisman standings as well, but obviously that's fluid, and we'll see week to week.
yeah. I mean, he's got a chance. I would definitely put
I
him
think
in the
he's going to
top
New
three.
York at this point, unless
Oh,
something
he's definitely
catastrophic
going. Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
He's definitely
I
going to
think
be a
he's.
finalist.
I think he's top. He's definitely. He's in my top 3. I've got him at 2.
Hmm.
at the moment. I'm not ready to knock Hooker off the pedestal, and I think it's just not an award that running backs win very often anymore with the amount of yards that quarterbacks are throwing for these days. I think Derrick
Yeah.
Henry was the last running back to win the Heisman.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's going to have a Hassan Haskins type game in Columbus to have his true Heisman moment. Because as good as he's played, um, he hasn't really had. I mean, I guess the Penn State game was sort of a Heisman moment, so I guess I can
Right.
give him that one.
Yeah, I mean, he had his
Um,
5 touchdown game early in the year, and then the Penn State game. Yeah, certainly he hasn't, but nobody else really has either. Like, I don't think you can take Hooker versus Alabama, a game in the middle of October, and say that's what's going to win him the Heisman. I mean, he may at the end of the day, certainly a front runner still, but I know that Blake is, I believe Blake's third in the Vegas odds right now, so he's in the mix.
yeah, yeah, man, it's been I think in the off season we had some conversations and you were ready to put Donovan Edwards as the starting tailback and keep Blake Corum in that complimentary role and
No, 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 it was not that. I put my name on Don as a more talented football player, and he will become a better football player. But Blake has just continued to improve and go above and beyond anything you'd ever accept. And today, in Jim's press conference, Jim gave him the highest compliment as a football player that Jim can give you, which is putting him in. He put Blake in the same class as Frank Gore as a football player, and that's like Jim's guy of all time. So,
yeah,
um, Jim said he's
it's
the best
just
running back that he's ever had, and it's like, yeah, he's freaking real, man. He's the real deal.
yeah. I mean, he's I mentioned it on the national pod, but he's one of four backs in the country that will consistently make people miss
Yeah,
in the backfield, and that's a help to any offensive line, especially. I mean, him and Edwards had multiple cutback runs against Rutgers due to Jeff Percy
oh
getting his
man,
butt whooped and other things that happened on the O line.
it's so
Um,
fun seeing Blake take that little hesitation step, and you can just see it, and you know he's going to explode. It's just a matter of where, and
I
then
mean,
boom,
that's
he's going through the second level, and it's just like half the time you're like, I'm like, he's going house, like he's taking that to the house.
when I have Blake Corum as my number three running back come April. I'm going to point to the Indiana run over and over and over and over again as to why he's there because there's there's four running backs in the country that can make that play at the
Yeah.
college level, and he's one of them.
So are you putting Jameer Gibbs too then? Because we both know Bijan's number one.
Yeah, probably as of right now. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I might put Corum over him because I know Corum can pass block, but
Yeah,
it's not
there's
scouting
a lot
season
to
yet.
there's a lot to remain to
Yeah,
a lot remains to be seen. But and I'll tell anybody right now, I'll tell people at work, I tell people when we talk about Blake, like as good as Blake is, he's not. Blake's going to be first team All American,
yeah,
but he's not the best running back prospect in the draft.
no,
So that tag belongs to Bijan Robinson, and the only thing that's going to take that from Bijan would be maybe some off field shit that like doesn't seem like it's him, but obviously you never know. So
yeah.
yep, we'll get into draft season later, but all right, 52-17 win over Rutgers, and we have a 3:30 kickoff at home versus Nebraska. I suspect we'll wear our traditional unis with the maize bottoms and blue tops for the next 2 weeks.
With
Um,
as bad as Nebraska's been, do you think Bussin' with the Boys is really gonna have that trophy ceremony and all that? They were talking in the off season of
I don't
Michigan and
know, man.
Nebraska, them creating a Bussin' with the Boys trophy or something like that.
You never know what those do. It's like they talk a lot of shit. So like it
Yeah,
depends on how busy they are. I'm pretty sure Compton's like signed with the team right now. I know Lawan's hurt, but oh yeah, and freaking Rashawn Gary tore his ACL over the weekend, which is way too bad because he had 6 sacks on the year and has really just blossomed into everything he was ever supposed to be.
yeah,
Um,
and I would like to take this personal moment to tell any Spartan fan to shove it up their ass because they were saying he was the most overrated player in the history of football and
yeah.
all that shit. So
Well, Kenny Willekes is also better than Aiden Hutchinson. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't. Yeah, that's. I don't even want to utter
Hey,
degree
I'm just
people's name or words for another year.
the only silver lining of Blake Corum or of Rashawn Gary getting hurt is that I don't have to see him sack Dak Prescott on Sunday. So
There you go. Well, all right. This has been the Michigan Homer Pod 425. You can catch us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. Please like, please comment, please share, and thanks for listening. Appreciate your time, everybody. We'll catch you next week.
But that's how I am.